Previously, in the Wii Sports Sword Fighting Championships, Wrinkles had always dreamed of being the world's greatest samurai, but his whole life he had been held back by one huge problem. He was completely and utterly blind. Despite this though, having been trained by the great sensei of Wuhu Island, Wrinkles decided to enter the Wii Sports Samurai competition. If, by some miracle, he could make his way through 3 rounds of both speed slice and dueling, he would be accepted as a protector of the realm, and his dream would come true. The road so far had been full of challenges. He had to outthink and outspeed Megan the monster by learning how to use his mind's eye. And if that wasn't bad enough, he then found himself going sword to sword with the infamous Smashley, during which Wrinkles was hit on the head so hard his vision came back. With a combination of his regained sight and an immense amount of determination, Wrinkles won the duel and progressed to the next round. What should have been a momentous occasion, however, was greatly overshadowed as Wrinkles looked out towards the horizon and set his now working eyes on rows and rows of bandit ships. This was terrible news. Wuhu Island was under imminent threat of invasion, and yet, as he looked around, the crowd, the competitors, the shogunate, everyone was completely unawares. Wrinkles had to warn somebody, and fast. With a great rush of adrenaline, he leapt from the dueling platform down to where the highest ranked members of the shogunate were gathered. "Oh goodness, terrible news!" he flustered. "Bandits out at sea! This must be the danger that you wise fellows had sensed." "Bandits?" chortled one of the shogunate, who was wearing a particularly funny hat. "And where are these so-called bandits?" "As I said, they're out at sea. They'll reach us any moment." But when Wrinkles turned around once more, he fell into a stunned silence. The horizon was empty. The bandits had disappeared. "Now listen to me, boy. Proclaiming an impending bandit invasion is very serious business." "I promise, they were just there. Loads of boats. I saw them with my own 2 eyes." "Hold on," said one of the others. "I thought you were blind. It says so on your competition application papers just here." Well, I was, but now I'm not." "Oh, well that's convenient." "My good fellow, if I were you, I'd be careful about spreading all of this mumbo-jumbo. You might get yourself disqualified. In fact, Stanley, move his next rounds forwards. That ought to teach him a lesson." "Right you are, Chief." At that moment, the gentleman, who Wrinkles now knew was called Stanley, whispered something up into the air. And, out of nowhere, the grand announcer appeared on the platform above. "Ladies and gentlewomen, I have a quick announcement from the Shogunate, and that's just to let you know that there is absolutely nothing going on, no potential of invasion, and nothing to be afraid of. Now, in other news, our next match will be featuring one of our bravest new challengers, Wrinkles." "Hold on! Why would you say that if there wasn't anything to be worried about?" shouted a samurai from the crowd. "Well, announcer, away!" Wrinkles so badly wanted to shout the real answer. He wanted to tell everyone the truth, but to do that, he would be risking everything he'd worked for. More to the point, his next speed slice was now just moments away. It seemed his only option was to win this competition as quickly as possible, and then figure out how to save the island himself. When he arrived at the speed slicing venue, his next opponent was a man named Hiramasa. He knew nothing about Hiramasa, but immediately things seemed a little strange as he walked up to the adjudicator mat and gave him a fist bump. No matter, Wrinkles just had to focus on his own game. "Is there something on your mind, Wrinkles?" asked his sensei. "It's nothing," he lied. "Well, whatever it is, don't let it distract you from the here and now." Wrinkles thought that if anything, a potential bandit invasion probably was something to be distracted by, but he couldn't tell anyone, not even his sensei. And with that, Matt was calling him over, and his next match began. Matt kicked things off once again by throwing 2 giant melons into the air. Wrinkles used all of his experience so far, waited patiently, and, mere seconds after it had hit the ground, Wrinkles flashed his katana and the watermelon was in 2 pieces. As Wrinkles could now see what was falling in front of him, he was finding this all much easier, and the second point went just as smoothly. Hiramasa was gritting his teeth in frustration, but whilst Wrinkles prepared himself for the third item to be thrown, he could have sworn that Hiramasa gave a cheeky wink in Matt's direction. Matt tossed a couple of stopwatches into the air, and this time, Wrinkles and Hiramasa brung their swords down in unison. The items in front of them broke in 2 at the exact same time. It seemed this point would be given as a draw. But then, with no apparent rhyme or reason, Matt held up his flag in Hiramasa's direction. This was all a bit suspect, and it was made even more curious as, during the next point, the very same thing happened. Maybe Wrinkles was letting the pressure get to him, and a horrible sense of doubt started to creep into his mind. But he could not get flustered here. The fate of the island was resting on his success. Wrinkles pulled himself together and claimed his third point with a wonderful strike. But, as Matt then hoisted 2 tapestries into the air, Hiramasa began to wave his sword in front of Wrinkles' face, and he was so distracted by this that when the tapestries fell, he and Hiramasa sliced them in 2 at the exact same time again. Matt swiveled his head from player to player with a menacing stare. And, all too predictably, the point went Hiramasa's way. Wrinkles didn't have time for this. The bandits could invade at any moment, and here he was, being held up by some cheating fraud. He tried his best to speed things up, but he was rushing too much, and his chopping technique became inconsistent. With the score at 4-all, it felt like this match would last forever. His sensei knew that something wasn't right.
Wrinkles, whatever it is that is looming over you can only be reached 1 step at a time. If you can't tell me what it is, then so be it. But, however big the bigger picture may seem, it can always be solved quicker by moving forward little by little.
Wrinkles took a deep breath. His sensei was right. When he thought about everything that was going on at once, it was too overwhelming. This pressure, this sense of responsibility, this worry, it was only getting in the way. All he needed to do right now was win 1 point at a time. He began to treat each round as its own smaller competition. Chop a melon and then reset. Chop a birthday cake and reset. Chop a giant piece of sushi and then reset. Refreshing his brain each time and casting everything else from his mind. Before he knew it, the rounds were flying by. It felt like only a few moments, and Wrinkles stood there at match point. With 1 more slash of his sword, he was victorious, and even afforded himself a little bit of time to do one of his celebratory dances. Wrinkles made sure to carry this same philosophy into his next duel. He had been paired up against King Cole, a name which commanded great respect in the Wii Sports kingdom, and of course amongst fans of Christmas carols. But nothing could faze Wrinkles now. He was taking the competition 1 bonk at a time. Each hit was calculated and cold, without any trace of feeling or thought. King Cole was no spring chicken, and at one point, Wrinkles was sent tumbling into the water below. But Wrinkles wasn't worried. He shook himself dry, recentered his sword without a word, and got back to business. Another victory, another quick celebratory dance, and then it was back to the task at hand. It was the final couple of rounds, and by this point, Wrinkles was a well-oiled machine. His third speed slice opponent, a man named Swordmaster Shohei, stood no chance. Wrinkles had separated himself from his emotions. He no longer cared for pointless things like stress and panic. Those were unnecessary. No, he just had to focus on one point at a time. One point at a time. One point at a time. But it wasn't working. Shohei was too good. He swung his sword with more conviction, more determination. Wrinkles had been trying so hard to keep his cool, but it was all bottling up inside him, and he began to lose his composure. He swiped around wildly, his actions became hurried, and in no time at all, he was losing by 8 points to 5.
Wrinkles, you misunderstand me. Don't ignore your situation. Work towards it. I was not asking you to cast your emotions aside. I was asking you to deal with them, one at a time. Instead of thinking of each point as a completely separate step, think of it as another step upwards. One more step on the staircase towards your goal.
It was like someone had flicked a switch back on. Wrinkles' emotions came flooding out of him, but he was working through them. And every time he chopped another strangely oversized object, it felt like progress. His sensei had helped him to find a compromise. He gained more and more momentum, and despite being overwhelmed, he was slowly beginning to fill with hope. Eventually, Shohei could do nothing but watch on as Wrinkles danced and jived in the splendor of another victory. It was now time for the final duel. His last opponent would be Switchblade Sarah, but in Wrinkles' opinion she might as well have been using a pocket knife, because he wasn't going to let her get even one hit. Okay fine, maybe she did get one hit, but apart from that, Wrinkles was flawless. He parried with unbending fortitude and sent Sarah toppling through the air. And then, as if things couldn't get any better, Wrinkles pulled off a move so extraordinary that it took even him by surprise. A sweeping combo of unforetold speed. The round was already over before anyone could say, "Everybody run!" Wait, what? What was going on? The sound of distant screams filled the air, and Wuhu volcano had begun to rumble again. The grand announcer had appeared with a look of terror struck across his perfect presentable face. "Terrible news! Horrible, terrible news! You won't believe me when I say it! The island has been boarded by bandits!" "Oh my goodness, what a surprise," said Wrinkles with almost too much sarcasm. "Yes, I know, it's awful, and they said they won't be leaving until they find it." "Wait, what do you mean? What's it?" "Announcer, away!" Wrinkles was confused. The bandits wouldn't leave until they found... what? At this point, his sensei arrived on the scene.
So this must be what you couldn't tell me about.
"I'm sorry,
Well, if I'm honest, Wrinkles, there's something I never told you either. Have you ever found it strange that such a tiny island like Wuhu requires so much samurai protection?"
"Oh, I've never really thought about it," Wrinkles replied.
Legend has it that long ago, this island was settled by a man known as the Grand Announcer. He settled in here looking for a peaceful life, away from the stresses of novelty sporting commentary. But that all changed one day when the island's volcano began to rumble, and he stumbled across a rather peculiar stone.
What was it?
Some call it the Holy Pebble, others call it Heaven's Testicle, but to my knowledge, it is best known as the Orb of Wisdom, a tool so powerful it will make anyone who wields it into a god. Listen to me, Wrinkles. It cannot be allowed to fall into the hands of mortal men.
What, as opposed to non-mortal men?
They could give it a go, but I think it'd still be a bit too powerful. Anyway, don't you see, Wrinkles? This is exactly what you've been training for. It is your dream to be a samurai. Now go and be one.
Wrinkles turned with a great sense of duty. Propelling himself into a run, he followed the sounds of destruction and despair, and in no time at all, he found himself face to face with a whole horde of bandits. They stood between him and the other side of a long, treacherous bridge. There was only one way across. He would have to go through them. Using everything he'd learned so far, Wrinkles began to take the bandits out with big sweeping motions of his sword. His skill level was unmatched, and as he continued across the bridge, they dropped like flies in front of him. He carried on going until a much more fearsome target stood in his way. No, it couldn't be. King Cole. They paced opposite each other, sizing one another up until, BAM! Wrinkles made the first blow. King Cole attempted to retaliate, but Wrinkles was many steps ahead. He parried well, and then finished him off with a quick 1-2. I'm sorry. They forced me to do it. Who forced you? I don't know. Head to the ruins. You'll find answers there. Thank you, Cole. Now, go play table tennis or something. Be a good man. With that, Wrinkles pushed forwards and travelled until he found the mysterious ruins. When he arrived, he was met with yet more opposition. Bandits even more fearsome than before. He fought his way bravely up past the remains of what seemed to be a forgotten civilization. And eventually, as the ruins began to clear, he saw yet another familiar face in front of him. It was Switchblade Sarah. She jabbed her sword towards him, but Wrinkles had already proved himself her superior, and he countered with great speed. Sarah was not done yet though, and she thumped a hit straight to the baldest part of Wrinkles' bald head. That was the last straw. Wrinkles went on the offensive, and she was knocked unconscious and sent sprawling across the floor. In her pocket, Wrinkles found a note. Enter castle, look for cave. Well, if that wasn't clear instruction, Wrinkles didn't know what was. And as darkness fell around him, he left the ruins behind and headed towards the castle. Those who defended this stronghold were even more fearsome than before. Men and women with intimidating bandit names like Chris and Tyrone and Sandra. Despite this, Wrinkles didn't waver, and after defeating them all, he charged into the keep and noticed a strange orange glow emanating from an ominous tunnel. As he entered, a wave of heat singed what very few hairs he had left from the top of his dome. Suddenly, it all made sense. This tunnel must lead directly to the center of Wuhu volcano, and that just could be where the Orb of Wisdom was hidden. As he moved onwards, the tunnel opened out into a vast lava chamber, and here, once again, was another horde of bandits. As before, Wrinkles took them on one by one, fighting tooth and nail to protect the island he loved so dearly. They kept coming, in what felt like an endless stream. But eventually, after many battles, Wrinkles was left facing only the toughest of them all. With a couple of deadly strikes, Wrinkles swiftly dealt with the first of 4, and the second went down just as quickly. The third squared up to him in a tense stalemate. But when they came to blows, Wrinkles had nothing to fear, for he was the better swordsman. One more to go. The most intimidating of them all, the Khan, Gabrielle. Gabrielle hit Wrinkles before he could steady his feet. And then, again, Wrinkles was in trouble. After exerting all that effort just getting here, and resisting so many strikes, he felt he might black out. Barely aware of what was going on, and with all the strength he could muster, he threw himself forwards, and drove his katana straight into the big bandit's face. Gabrielle hit the floor, and Wrinkles too stumbled backwards, just about clinging to consciousness. He could feel his head beginning to roll backwards. His legs were giving way beneath him. And then, as he began to fall, somewhere off in the distance, he saw a faint flickering light. a twinkle of something rare, something indescribably magical. It was getting brighter and brighter, like staring straight into the sun, and then... Wrinkles awoke to the sound of cheering. He could hear his own name being chanted by a crowd of people from somewhere nearby. "Are you okay, Wrinkles? Let me help you up." That was his sensei's voice. He was hoisted to his feet. "Ladies and gentlewomen, give it up for our samurai savior, Wrinkles!" He could hear the grand announcer, but he could only hear him. Wrinkles stood there in total darkness, and reality hit him like a truck. He couldn't see. He was blind again. But the tale did not end on an entirely sad note. Wrinkles had saved Wuhu Island, and he was given more medals and more honours than he knew what to do with. He was made an esteemed member of the Samurai Guard. His old sword was hung up in the Wuhu Island Hall of Fame, and after all was said and done, Wrinkles decided he'd had enough of fighting and instead travelled away from Wuhu Island to a smaller island out at sea, a little place by the name of Stoke-on-Trent, and it was here that he established his very own baseball team. As for the Orb of Wisdom, it remained as it always was, nothing but a myth or an old wives' tale. But stories of such fascinating relics are not left untouched forever, and who is to say when the next poor soul may succumb to temptation?